And this is a rare and serious conduct motion that calls on the Chancellor of the Exchequer to apologise for misleading the country about the state of public finances, breaking promises on tax and breaching the OBR confidentiality process. In short, for not being straight with the British people. I was expecting to refer to more contributions this afternoon, but it has been a slightly curtailed debate. And a very comprehensive introduction from my right honourable friend. And the members for Harlow and Loughborough were surprised and disappointed that the Chancellor is being held to account, not for her personality, but for her conduct. And as my right honourable friend just said, this debate is about honesty and trust and confidence and what happens as a result, and about the shenanigans, as my honourable friend for West Worcestershire put it. And on Times Radio this morning, my right honourable friend was asked why this debate matters. It matters because a deliberate briefing and misrepresentation of the budget has damaged workers, savers, pensioners and investors. So let's start with the simple truth. This government and the Chancellor spun false narratives about the public finances to justify their political choices to increase welfare spending.
Giving way. During the budget debates, I asked the Shadow Chancellor whether he would address the fact that he did, on multiple occasions, refer to the public finances in a fantastically negative tone, which appeared far from the truth that was revealed in the budget, suggesting at one point that there was a £40 billion black hole in the public finances. So I offer him this opportunity. He suggests that we should be straight with the public about the state of the finances. Will he take this opportunity on behalf of his colleague to apologise for that now?
Well, if the honourable gentleman had been here for the whole debate, you'd have had the opportunity of the opening 45-minute speech to put that to my right honourable friend. And what happened as a result of all those policy kites that were flown? Pensions were drawn down, fewer mortgages were approved and investment paused. That's not my verdict. The Bank of England warned the economy was heading for slowdown as a result of the uncertainty. The British Chambers of Commerce said that uncertainty affected investment and recruitment, and hundreds of thousands of people drew down their pensions. Those are the real impacts of this activity, these shenanigans, and there is genuine anger across the country at the damage this uncertainty caused. And the Chancellor must take responsibility because she is responsible for that uncertainty. And people are already cynical about politics, but what could we do more to undermine trust than abusing the OBR process to cook up a story to make a case for higher taxes that were not needed? It's the Chancellor who is at the centre of misleading the country. On the 4th of November, she staged that unprecedented press conference to roll the pitch for tax rises. And I won't. And in breach of the confidentiality rules, she warned an OBR productivity downgrade meant lower tax receipts. Indeed it did. But the OBR report makes very clear that downgrade was more than addressed by higher tax receipts. In other words, there was no black hole. The Chancellor had the numbers. She knew the position. Now we know what she said was simply not true. Instead, she crafted a narrative to justify decisions to increase taxes to fund higher welfare spending. On the 13th of November, the Financial Times reported that the Chancellor had decided against the much-briefed income tax increases. The next day, after the gilt market had responded badly, journalists were then briefed that the tax rises would not happen, thanks to an improved fiscal forecast. But that is not what the OBR pre-financial measures said. Little wonder the OBR took that extraordinary step of publishing the forecast, exposing the truth that there was no giant deficit being briefed to the press. The OBR said it took this action to address misconceptions about the forecast. And where might these misconceptions come from? You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to identify the Treasury as the culprit. I'll give way.
Yep, well done, Chairman. Keep going.
The honourable member for giving way. The OBR also told the Treasury Select Committee, on which I sit, that the narrative that the Chancellor set out on the 4th of November was consistent with the forecast at that time. When the OBR made that point, were they right or were they wrong? Are you questioning what the OBR said?
The Speaker is not questioning anyone. I am pointing out that the Chancellor said that there was a big £16 billion downgrade from the productivity, but she didn't mention that was all offset. That was all offset. She did not mention that. If the Minister wants to intervene, say she did mention that on the 4th of November, I'll give way. She didn't. She didn't at all. Yesterday, when in the House, the Chancellor was asked if she had authorised or allowed confidential details of the budget or forecast to be briefed to the press, and she gave a categorical no. So if the Chancellor didn't licence briefings, can the Minister give a cast-iron commitment that no other ministers, special advisers or officials in the Treasury or Number 10 briefed or authorised briefings about potential measures or the forecast? And frankly, if you believe all of these were unauthorised briefings, then the Treasury is utterly out of control, and I have a bridge to sell you. There is a leak inquiry, but the Permanent Secretary said today it centres on the 13th of November, not the tsunami of tall tales on potential budget measures. Why might that be, I wonder? Nothing less than a full inquiry of the findings made public will do. And that brings us to the broken promises referred to in the motion. A year ago, the Chancellor delivered the biggest tax-raising budget in modern history, hitting the British people with £40 billion of tax rises. And then in this budget, taxes were increased yet again by £26 billion, despite the Chancellor promising not to come back for more. Life comes at you fast, but the Chancellor a year ago also said extending the freeze on income tax thresholds would hurt working people and take money out of their payslips. Do they all remember that? They all remember her saying that? I certainly do. And so she said she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't freeze the thresholds. Then what did she do? Oh, she froze the threshold. She imposed a 3-year extension, £23 billion, coming out of the pockets of 1.7 million people who will pay higher taxes for her failures. And as the motion says, the Chancellor should apologise for breaking her promise not to raise taxes again. Madam Deputy Speaker, what Chancellors say matters. The public and the markets need to believe them, to trust that they aren't being misled. Well, that is not the case around the events of this budget. That's why this motion calls on the Chancellor to apologise for the misleading picture she presented of the public finances, for the Treasury briefings that did so much damage to businesses and to people, and for breaking her promise not to increase taxes. Frankly, in the face of such a charge sheet, an apology is the very least that the British public deserve, and I commend this motion.
Minister.